Is Stefan Molyneux, a Canadian philosopher, blogger, essayist, author, and host of Free Domain Radio series of podcasts. Very articulate gentleman. Some great videos have been made with his work. He's written numerous articles, been published on libertarian websites such as LouRockwell.com, Anti-War, and we really appreciate him joining us. He's a multi-time author. He has written on truth, the tyranny of illusions, universally preferable behavior. It just goes on. We'll talk about it all with him. His website is freedomainradio.com, and we've got him linked up on Infowars.com. But, Stefan, what is the nature of the control freak, and why do they always, like a tropism, like a spider spins a certain type of web, a plant turns towards the sun, why do governments always wear black uniforms and in the end start mass murdering and burning everything while running around naked declaring themselves God? We now see TSA Weekly literally going crazy, declaring God, stripping down naked. What is that tropism, and how do we deal with it? And why is there sacrament murdering children?
Well, power is an addiction, and power can't be understood outside the context of psychological addictions. And psychological addictions always escalate. Like if you've ever known someone with a drug problem or a drinking problem, they always escalate until there's a catastrophe. And sometimes only then, there is the possibility that people will wake up and say, you know, wait, if you're a heavy drinker and you find yourself lying in a ditch in Vegas with, I don't know, a dead hooker or something like that, then part of you is going to say, maybe, just maybe, I should look into my drinking as a problem. We're very close to that cliff edge, in my opinion, right now. As you say, the fiat currency is going down. WikiLeaks is about to expose the fact that Bank of America is probably extremely corrupt and has no particular ownership of the homes that they're foreclosing on, which is going to cause a massive run on U.S. debt. And so we're right close to sort of waking up in the ditch in Vegas and saying to ourselves, what are we doing by putting these nut jobs with guns at the center of organizing society? And how could we expect the initiation of force in the solution of social problems to come up with anything other than all of these series of catastrophes and disasters for the common man?
Very well said. I want one of your many research points is that nations are just, and I agree with you, are basically nothing more than farms, different systems of farming, and how the more open farms always create incredible inventions and wealth, but then that allows the parasites to grow, and it's a cycle. Break that down briefly, and then let's get into the WikiLeaks information. I was told by John Young, big WikiLeaks insider, who I want to get back on this week, Jaron, forgot to tell you that it would be Bank of America and other big banks. Now the mainstream media is saying that's indeed what's about to happen. Give us your view on what that's going to trigger. But first, that amazing breakdown you do, and it's complex but at the same time simple, explaining how society really operates.
Sure. If you think about floating above a map of the world, then you see, of course, countries with borders and different colors. And my perspective is that, and it's a very strong case to be made for this, that what you're looking at is a series of tax farms where human beings are encouraged to breed. And then when they breed, for the most part, their children are taken into the care of the state. In other words, to break the parent-child bond, most people are forced, because of high taxation, two parents are forced to go to work in the marketplace, which means that state-run or state-licensed daycares take over the children, which is something that the church in its wildest dreams could never have imagined. And then these children are brought up with adherence to the state as parent, and then they're told that the state is there to help them and there to take care of them and there to organize things, and they're made afraid of freedom. In other words, if you can convince your livestock that out there beyond the field is nothing but predators and danger, then you don't actually even need to build a fence, because they'll all just stay in the invisible electronic fence of propaganda. And so people grow up, and one of the amazing things that has happened in the democratic or crony capitalist model, which is what the US and most of Western Europe is currently running under, and my home tax farm of Canada, is that they realized that if you don't force someone into an occupation, which was the feudal and the Roman model, if you allow someone to choose his own occupation, he's going to feel a lot more free, and he's going to be a lot more productive because he's going to have enthusiasm. You can't make slaves enthusiastic. You can't make serfs enthusiastic. But people who become lawyers and doctors and accountants and broadcasters have an enthusiasm because they believe that they're in control of their own lives. But of course, unless you control the currency, unless the citizens control the currency, there's no freedom, either economic or political whatsoever. So because we are allowed to choose our own occupations, we're that much more productive. We create that much more wealth, which is a story since the Industrial Revolution. However, that wealth is then further taxed and further taxed to create a massive and bloated slug-like leech of a ruling class that hangs off the economic jugular of the citizenry until, like a cancer, it grows to the point where it overwhelms the host. And that's what, of course, is happening with the government. But
and that's the crossroads that we've now entered. Will we kick the giant, parasitic, vampiric slug dripping with pus off of us? Or this slug has mind control beams through the television. Its eyes blink, teaching you to love it and see it as a beautiful blonde. But, I mean, can we break the conditioning and see that it's a, vomit-reeking slug? And will we pull it off of us and then, crawl away and, get some substance and survive? Or will we succumb to the slug and let it fully suck us dry with its scrofulous mouth?
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Alex, for really getting behind my metaphor and giving it a good push. I think that really propelled it to a new height. We absolutely can, because we have mind-freeing rays called internet data packets, which people can get information that previously was completely unavailable. So we can, but there's no certainty that we will. That depends upon the actions and commitment and intensity of individuals. And this is the kind of problem that does not appear to happen in a catastrophic way until it's almost too late. So getting people to wake up to the rumblings at the top of the mountain saying there's going to be an avalanche, and people are like, no, it's just snowing a little, it snows sometimes. That's the challenge that we have to do, to remind people that we're not crazy for saying, wake up and act.
Absolutely. Stefan Molyneux is our guest. We're going to come right back with him and get his view on these big WikiLeaks announcements. The next salvos to come out, reportedly, on Bank of America. Stay with us, GCNlive.com. I don't know who to believe about the whole WikiLeaks thing, but I know this. It's a case point. It's a test case. If they are allowed to arrest or imprison or even execute, as Bill O'Reilly and Huckabee and others have called for, then there's no free press in this world. And I've seen Sarah Palin say that he's un-American and that he should be extradited here. Well, he's not an American. So, it really shows that Sarah Palin, whatever you think of her, is not the sharpest knife in the drawer. It's when she talked about our ally, North Korea. She's not fit to be dog catcher just with her knowledge of the world. But that's a distraction overall. The point I was trying to get to here is that a lot of people I respect, like Wayne Madsen and others, and John Young of Cryptome, who registered with the WikiLeaks domain, have said it's full of intelligence agency operatives. And that I remember hearing a year ago that next it would be going after banks, specifically enemies of George Soros and others. And now we see that coming out. But overall, it's very positive to have an open, free society. And I just see WikiLeaks being used as an electronic Pearl Harbor. And I predicted that. And now they want to come in with total draconian control in the name of restricting the web because of WikiLeaks. So I think at certain levels, this is being manipulated. Stefan, please continue.
Well, I think that the WikiLeaks is interesting because the revelations about the war in Afghanistan did not meet with much outrage from media pundits. The revelations about the spying on UN members and other nasty things that were going on in American intelligence community was not met with much outrage. Now the outrage is really boiling over because this is going to cut to the financial jugular of the fiat currency system. Because what happened, of course, as you know, is that people took out mortgages with the banks packaged them up, and basically took a cup of liquid, blue liquid, and put it into the ocean. In other words, they spliced and diced all of these mortgages and sold them in bits and pieces all over the world. And now that the mortgages are failing, people are saying, okay, who owns my house? Like, if you want to take my house back, you have to prove to me that you own it. But this has all been turned into confetti. All these deeds of ownership have been turned into confetti and blown into the four winds. And there's nothing there that anybody owns in particular. And if Bank of America knew this and foreclosed anyway, then they're going to be liable to significant criminal proceedings. That's going to go out to other banks in the U.S. system and overseas, which is going to be a hammer blow to the tottering fiat currency system around the world. And I think that's what people are becoming so hysterical about. That's why people are calling for the assassination of this guy who did nothing. He actually released all of his information through mainstream media. But of course, they're not courageous enough to go after the mainstream media because they need the mainstream media to lull the sheep with shiny objects of nonsense and inconsequentiality. So I think it's really important to understand that there's a lot more at stake for the ruling class with the Bank of America potential scandal than there ever was with the revelations about dishonesty in war and diplomacy.
Well, there's something more here. And I want to get your take on this, Stefan, that this too big to fail has been their plan since the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. These private banking families have used similar systems in Europe, in the third world, over and over again by connecting everybody's pension funds and investments to this toxic stew of derivatives that have been mixed in with all the real investments. They can now always hold people hostage to give us unlimited trillions, bail us out, give us more power, or we'll bring the whole system down. But if you look at the mathematical breakdown, it's a foregone conclusion that nothing can fix this. All we can do is go ahead and take the hit and then arrest these criminals.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely right. The system can't be recovered. I think it's important to understand as well that the war chest of money was at its very highest peak because, of course, all the Social Security money has been collected and largely spent. But this is right before the biggest payout of government to citizen in history, which is the retirement of the baby boomers. So the amount of money that the government owes is right at its peak and right before all of this money needs to start being paid out in health care and in old age pensions to people. The system itself gets completely pillaged. And I don't
exactly
think that's
right at the time that the baby boomers start to retire. Oh, they've been investing all these years. Guess what? It's been stolen. So baby boomers, you better submit to total big government and all these new taxes on the young people and join us in the too big to fail, or you'll never get your money. But we know from the third world experiences, Argentina, the list goes on, Brazil, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Eastern Europe, Weimar Republic, Germany, that once the yuppies buy in to the immorality of robbing everybody below them, then they're going to have it all taken from them as well. Stay there. I want you to continue on that key point, amazing point that Stefan just made. Stay with us.